So thank you to everyone that is here on site, and thank you for all of those that are online. Um, so before I begin, want to have a quick introduction. So my name is Alpesh Parikh. I've been practicing mindfulness in the Goenka tradition for a long time. Um, I started with SN Goenka, Vipassana meditation, the 10-day retreat. Uh, and then I followed the insight meditation path, and I am now attracted to Tibetan Buddhism Mahamudra style. I believe that form of open awareness meditation uh, has given me a perspective that I didn't have before. You know, so I'm really grateful for all the teachers that I have access to, online or in person. Grateful to Candle and Trina for giving me an opportunity to offer these talks. Um, so I am a practitioner first and foremost, and I sometimes teach. So in our Sangha, uh, we have come up with this idea of survey. We are not professional teachers, nor are we monastics. So we would love to have feedback from all of you as to how you found our talks, our teachings, especially if you find ways in which we can improve. So when you get a survey from someone from our Sangha,
there's a QR code over on the table before you leave.
okay, yeah, please, QR code. Yes, and we'll post the QR code online so that everybody on Zoom can participate. So yes, please give your feedback. I'll be very interested in learning more about what you have to say, what went right, what I can improve upon. So that'll allow me to be a better teacher. So all right, that's so. Let's begin. How many of you are familiar with dependent origination in the room? Are you familiar with the teachings of dependent origination? Okay, all right. Online, Jessica, Margaret, Gavin. Yes, okay, good. Very good. Okay. Oh, thank you, Gavin. And Casey? Okay, all right. So, good, thank you. So, dependent origination is one of the central teachings of Buddhism. It is said that when Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, the night of his enlightenment, he saw he saw dependent origination. He realized the dependent origination principle, where one aspect of a condition led to another, led to another, led to another. So he saw all the links that ultimately lead to suffering. And in reverse, he also saw that when you break the links one by one, it leads to end of suffering. It leads to enlightenment, right? So all Buddhist teachings, all the teachings that he gave can be explained through the principles of dependent origination. Dependent origination is the key that unlocks all Buddhist teachings. And in one of the suttas, Buddha said to Ananda, to his disciple Ananda, that if you understand dependent origination, you will understand Dhamma. And if you understand Dhamma, you will understand dependent origination. Okay, so dependent origination explains the interconnected and conditional nature of all phenomena. So it teaches that nothing exists independently. There is no independent existence. Everything arises due to specific causes and conditions. So this principle encapsulates the cyclical process of existence. So it shows how suffering emerges and persists in a chain of causation. So uh, the basic expression of dependent origination can be found in many Pali texts. And the Buddha talked about this from many, many different perspectives in many, many different suttas, right? His original teachings. One of the most prominent suttas that explains dependent origination is Samyutta Nikaya 1220. Samyutta Nikaya 2020. So it's also called the analysis of dependent origination. Just like all Buddhist, just like all sutras that Buddha himself conveyed, it's very short, very cryptic, but it's very, very profound. You know, so this sutta, and I quote, I'm reading from my notes now. If this is, that comes to be. From the arising of this, that arises. If this is not, that does not come to be. From the stopping of this, that is stopped. So it sounds like a logical kind of a puzzle, but his explanation tells us that there is nothing linear about this and that. It's a very dynamic web. Everything is made of parts. All those parts are moving, and all those parts are influencing conditions, and those conditions give rise to something, and then it falls away. You see? So everything is interconnected, everything is moving, and a set of conditions give rise to something, and that something gives rise to something else, right? Now, when you look at all Buddha's teachings, when you look at like the Four Noble Truths, right, you will see an expression of dependent origination. So, like the first noble truth is that there is suffering. The second noble truth is that there is a cause for the suffering. So there are these causes and conditions that cause suffering, and then there is a way out of suffering. So if you stop this, then you stop that. You see? So, and if you look at the five aggregates, if you look at any teaching, underneath it, you'll find causes and conditions that give rise to something. So, um, again, so it's a vast dynamic web of interconnected conditions. They all condition one another. Um, so this understanding actually transforms how we practice. So rather than trying to force a particular experience, so today the talk is about compassion, right? Rather than try to force an experience of compassion, if we skillfully work on causes and conditions that cause compassion to arise, then our practice will be much more deeper. Our practice will be much more profound. There is a philosopher, there's a Buddhist philosopher and teacher by the name of Lee Brasington. Lee Brasington. He has this beautiful acronym that talks about dependent origination. And his acronym is SODAPI. SODAPI. He uses this acronym to define dependent origination. And SODAPI stands for streams of dependently arising processes interacting. Okay. So there are streams of processes that arise. They are not independent, they are all dependent on one another. And then they are interacting with one another as well. So it becomes a very complex, dynamic web of causes and conditions that bring about certain effect. Um, so, so when we talk, so if we want to talk about cultivating certain quality, let's focus on the causes and conditions that allow this quality to manifest, right? Um, this is where we talk about. I want to talk about gardening, right? The title of the talk is "Cultivating a Garden of Compassion." Now, my wife here, she loves gardening. When we moved to our house about 2 years ago, we had a very barren kind of a yard, side yard, a small yard, but it was barren. So she set about working, you know. So she broke the foundation, she added soil, she um, she brought mulch. I mean, I helped her do some of these things without knowing the end goal. I was just helping her in certain steps. And then she brought some flowers that she got from farmers market, like hydrangea, for example, right? She planted hydrangea and then she watered it. She added fertilizer to it, right? So it took a long time. But then after 6 or 9 months, suddenly it bloomed, right? The hydrangea bloomed. And then she bought other flowers. So 2 years now, 3 years from that time, we now have a beautiful garden, rich, diverse garden, all kinds of flowers, different colors, different shades, and they're all kind of drought resistant. So that is an example of dependent origination. If you want to plant hydrangea, you just don't go to a gardening store, buy a seedling of hydrangea, pluck it on the ground, and expect it to grow, right? You have to work on all these causes and conditions. And then, when these causes and conditions come together, by grace of nature, hydrangea sprouts, hydrangea arises, right? So, this is a beautiful metaphor, and that's what we will try to do in this session today. Skillfully work on cause and conditions as if we are planting a garden of compassion. And the idea is that if we practice long enough with a lot of concentration, a lot of focus, pretty soon we'll have a garden. So we won't have to do any more effort. Compassion will be available to us 24/7, you know, in theory. In theory, okay? So, um, so that is what this talk is going to be. Now, compassion, right? What exactly is compassion? So, the classical definition of compassion is quivering of the heart when it meets suffering, right? Our heart quivers when it encounters suffering, suffering of our own self and suffering of others, right? Dalai Lama has another definition of compassion, actually, an expression of compassion. Dalai Lama says that if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, I mean, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. You see? So there is an element of compassion practice that gives us happiness and joy. And we should not lose track of that. Okay. So I'll come back to this quote again when we talk more about compassion. So that is one expression of compassion, that if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Now, there's another aspect of compassion that deals with self-compassion. Okay, so I'm going to read a quote from Pema Chodron. She's a wonderful teacher, with Shambhala Center. She says, only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. So, compassion is predicated upon suffering, right? When we talk about the Brahma Viharas, the four divine abodes, right? We talk about loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, and sympathetic joy, right? Those four qualities. You're familiar with those qualities, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, okay, thank you. And I know online you're familiar, right? Okay, thank you. So the four divine abodes, and I'm taking a step back now, okay? The four divine abodes are in some ways fruits of our mindfulness practice. They are the qualities uh, that are heart qualities and mind qualities. Um, they can be endpoints of the practice, but they can also be a motivation for our practice. Because with these Brahma Viharas, uh, when we cultivate them, we become joyful, we become happy. And they are called Brahma Viharas because it's said that when gods hang out in heaven, they display these qualities in abundance. And there is no limit as to how much can these qualities arise. There is no depth. It is basically immeasurable. So keep that in mind when we are talking about compassion also. Even though compassion is predicated upon suffering, suffering is not sublime, but the quality of compassion, the quality of the caring heart, that is sublime. And there is no limit to how compassionate we can be. See? So, and compassion is actually innate to us. When we see children, right? There was this experiment that was done by some researchers in a small kindergarten classroom. There were kids kind of running around, playing around, and then one teacher pretended to fall. The moment she fell, all the kids stopped what they were doing and they ran towards her, and tried to comfort her, right? Because that's what kids are, right? And as we grow, somehow this quality gets obscured by our life experiences, right? But deep inside, innate to us, we have this quality of compassion, compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. So the practice is just to remove all those things that obscure our original innate quality. Um, so compassion has what is called as a near enemy and a far enemy. Now, in 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 Buddhist terms, a near enemy is a quality that masquerades as the original quality. It's not the real one. It kind of pretends to be one. So, for example, pity. When we have when we take pity on someone, pity is not exactly compassion. You know, there's nothing wrong with pity, but pity is a near enemy of compassion. When when we are pitiful, when we have the experience of pity, it does not expand our heart. See, um, it actually contracts. So that is one of the near enemy of compassion, and the far enemy of compassion is a quality that is completely opposite to compassion. So cruelty, for example, cruelty is completely opposite from compassion. So cruelty is called the far enemy of compassion. So with compassion now, we are trying to break open our heart. So there is tenderness when we see suffering, right? Um, and when we are practicing compassion, when we encounter suffering, right, it actually soothes our heart. It should actually soften us. Again, coming back to Dalai Lama, he was talking about what he called selfish altruism. He said, when you are supporting others and, expressing your caring, you become joyful. And it is a source of joy, and you should enjoy it. Right? So, this is selfish altruism. When we are supporting someone through compassion, it becomes a source of joy. And only then can it become limitless. you know Otherwise, if this experience of compassion is not joyful, is not soothing, then after a while we will hit a brick wall. We won't be able to proceed further. We will encounter some suffering, and then we just won't be able to proceed because we don't have the capacity for it, right? So having this perspective of compassion really opens up our heart, improves or increases our capacity for compassion. So, we just like all the other Brahma Vihara practice, the way we do this practice is we do this for ourselves, for our benefactors or loved ones. We do it for people whom we don't like, and we do it for neutral people. Right? And neutral people means people uh, all over the world, right? People that we don't know. But with compassion, it's a bit different. With compassion, you start with somebody who is suffering. That activates our caring heart. You see, that activates our compassion. So we start with someone who's suffering, and then we do it for ourselves, and then we do it for benefactors and others. Now, if we are suffering, and in the sense we are all suffering in one way or the other, right? But if we are particularly going through some difficult time, it's perfectly fine to start with our own selves, right? Because we need to soothe ourselves before we can help somebody else, right? So when you start with compassion, start with someone who's suffering. Maybe it could be somebody else that you know, or start with your own self, especially if you're going through some difficult times. That activates the quality of compassion, and then you can kind of expand it out to others. All right. Now, are there any questions on anything I've said so far here in this room or on Zoom? Okay, good. Thank you. Um, so, with any Brahma Vihara practice, the way we practice is we come up with certain phrases, certain affirmations that can speak to us, affirmations that speak to the situation, um, and is extremely customizable. You can come up with anything that kind of speaks to you, speaks to your heart, right? So what we are going to do is now, now that I've kind of talked about compassion, we'll talk about the so-called causes and conditions that causes compassion to arise, and I will give a particular phrase. Okay, I'll elaborate on that phrase, and then we will do a guided meditation for maybe 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever time we have left. We'll do guided meditation, and in that guided meditation, I'll repeat these same phrases, and then you can repeat those phrases to yourself and then see what comes up, you know. All right, so like I said, we already possess the innate qualities of self compassion. So it should not come as something that is alien to us. We all have it. We just need to recognize it. Okay. So, so I started this talk by talking about dependent origination, causes and conditions that give rise to certain experiences, right? So I want to talk about causes and conditions that give rise to compassion. Okay. So the first cause, the first condition that gives rise to compassion is self compassion. If you don't have self compassion, there is no way you can be compassionate towards somebody else. You can be, but it'll be kind of limited. And when we are doing this Brahma Vihara practice, we are going all the way, in the sense that we are going all the way because there is no limit to how deep we can go with this practice, right? So, self compassion is the first cause and condition that needs to be in place for compassion to arise. And have you heard of Kristen Neff by any chance? Kristen Neff? Okay. Online on Zoom, Jessica, Margaret. Okay. Have you heard of Kristen Neff? Okay. All right. Okay, Jessica. She is she's a she's a professor, I believe. She's in Austin, Texas. She was going through some very, very difficult time in the 90s when she attended certain Buddhist classes, and they were talking about self-compassion, right? Love, self-love, and self-compassion. And this was completely alien to her, and she realized that when she was going through this difficult time, that's exactly what she needed. She needed self-love and self-compassion. She started doing those practices, and it helped her a lot. And then she realized that in this kind of society, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about self-love, self-compassion, right? So she did her research, she did deep into this practice, and she wrote a book on self-compassion. And I would say single-handedly, she has made this term popular and acceptable, to the in culture, in popular culture today, right? So self-compassion, everybody understands the term thanks to all the work that Christine has done, and she has actually founded um, an institute where they explore this quality in detail, and they have teaching programs and stuff like that. So Christine Neff and her partner Chris Gerber, I think his name is Chris Gerber. they have come up with this practice of self-compassion. So when you are going through some difficult time, right? Step one is you place your hand, in your heart, and you say that this is a moment of suffering. So you are acknowledging the fact that you are suffering, right? Then you say that suffering is part of life, or I'm not alone, whatever, because we are all suffering, right? And then the third part is, may I hold my suffering with kindness and compassion. So this profound practice has three separate components. One is mindfulness, second is common humanity, and the third is compassion. So you bring all these qualities together, and it works wonderfully well, when you're going through some difficult time, right? You can talk to yourself, you can, you know place your hand on your arm, on your heart, on your chest. You can say things like, this is a moment of suffering. Yes, I acknowledge I am suffering. This is what suffering looks like. And then, suffering is part of life. We are all going through suffering. You accept the suffering, and then you say that, may I hold my suffering with kindness and compassion. So out of you're not spinning out simply because you're having a difficult time. You are suffering, and you are trying to be at peace with the suffering. And sometimes this practice can open up new ways of thinking, new insights that will allow you to deal with the original situation that is causing you suffering, right? So that is self compassion. Now, there is another aspect of self compassion that is a little bit more direct. And that is, remember, I said that we have self compassion innately within us. We need to recognize that in our day to day kind of activities. So, for example, um, anger, right? I've had many instances in the past that kind of made me angry. Sometimes I still get angry, right? But if you look into this emotion of anger, what is underneath the anger? Underneath the anger is self compassion, because you love yourself, you don't want to be hurt, and then when somebody hurts us, that's the reaction. How dare you? Why did you? Right? So when we experience anger, if we are able to look at what's underneath the anger, you are tapping into self compassion. Because if you didn't have self compassion, you would not be angry, you know? And the same is true for other emotions like guilt. When we are guilty of something, why are we guilty? Because we love ourselves, we hold ourselves to a very high standards, but then something happens and we fall off that standard, and that's when we feel guilt, right? Now, as an emotion, guilt or shame or anger, there's nothing wrong. But what happens is we get carried away by those emotions, and then we end up doing unskillful things. So if we take a step back without reacting and go underneath this anger, we'll find self-compassion. And I've had this experience many times. When I get angry, right? If I'm able to stop, I can see that I'm angry because I love myself. I don't want to be angry. And I place my hand on my heart and I kind of nurture myself. And then the anger goes away, you know. Um, but the advantage is that I'm not spinning off. I'm not doing anything that I'm not reacting to the anger and taking unskillful actions. You see? So this is an example of turning poison into medicine. You see what I'm saying? Something that is unskillful, you utilizing that unskillful thing, and you're doing that to open up your heart, right? So when we talk about self-compassion, when we're talking about cause and conditions that give rise to compassion, the first cause and condition is self-compassion. And I have a phrase for self-compassion. It's this: may I notice the many moments of self compassion throughout the day. So, sorry. Oh, thank you. So that's one phrase when we use in our day-to-day practice. It's a reminder that yes, I'm going to recognize the many moments of self-compassion throughout the day. I'll give another example of these moments of self-compassion. Let's say we are bored, right? We are at home and we are bored, and we reach out to the phone and start scrolling, right? Now, the action of scrolling is not exactly skillful, but the impulse behind that action is one of self-compassion, because we don't want to be bored. Boredom is suffering. We don't want to suffer, so we are doing something else, right? So you see what I'm saying? There are so many moments during the day when you will recognize this self compassion within yourself. So the first phrase, and that we will use this in our guided meditation: may I notice the many moments of self-compassion throughout the day. All right. Now, the second cause and condition that allows compassion to arise and thrive is about having a soothing experience. Remember when I talked about Dalai Lama, he talked about selfish altruism, right? When you are supporting others and experiencing your caring, you become joyful. So let's say we have a small child that is crying. We pick that child up and we want the child to stop crying, right? We are comforting the child. That experience of comfort is a very soothing experience for us, right? Just because the child is crying, we don't get traumatized, you see, right? But we comfort the child. It's a soothing experience for us. We settle down, and then the child recognizes the energy that we are calm and composed, and pretty soon the child will latch on that energy and the child will start crying, will stop crying, sorry, right? So we need to remember that compassion, when we give compassion to somebody else, it has to be a soothing experience for us. It should soften us. While giving compassion, if it hardens us in some way, that means we are not doing something right. If it hardens us in some way, then you know what's happening? We are empathizing with that person. Now, there's nothing wrong with empathy. Somebody's suffering and we empathize with that person, that, oh, I can see, I can see why you're suffering. With empathy, you are downgrading yourself so that you can be in line with the other person, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with empathy. It's a skillful uh, action, it can be a skillful emotion. But from the context of Brahma Viharas, from the context of the Buddhist practice of compassion, when we see somebody suffering, we want them to upregulate to where we are. We are bringing people up. We are not bringing ourselves down to their level. We want them to come up to our level. You see? So that is the soothing experience behind compassion. And you know what happens when you keep in mind the fact that compassion should be a soothing experience, it increases our capacity for compassion. You know, I have practiced compassion in the past where I focus on my suffering of others. But pretty soon, if I widen it, I hit a brick wall. I used to hit a brick wall because there was so much suffering I couldn't bear. I couldn't bear it, right? Because at that time, the missing element was soothing. I was not looking at my own self. I was not soothing myself when I was in compassion. And so my experience was very, very limited. But this is not what Buddha wants us to do. When Buddha talks about compassion, he talks about this as an immeasurable quality, as a divine quality that has absolutely no depth. So that can only happen when we take compassion as a soothing experience for us, right? And then, so the quote, the phrase that I use is, may I have a soothing experience while offering compassion to others. So in our daily practice, we are now reminding ourselves that may I notice the many moments of self compassion, and then may I have a soothing experience while offering compassion to others. And then the third cause and condition, kindness and care, right? So, kindness and care means that we experience compassion. That should feel like a tender heart. It should tenderize our heart, so to speak. We should be open and emotionally responsive to the pain or struggle of others, but we should also experience a sense of vulnerability. And that's not weakness, okay? It comes out of strength, but a sense of vulnerability and a clear awareness that yes, suffering exists and it's paired with a desire to relieve it. So when we are practicing compassion, it's not possible for us to relieve everybody's suffering. For example, if you are compassionate about people in Ukraine, for example, right? There is really nothing that you can do to relieve their suffering, right? So you have to be mindful of the resources that you have and what you can do to relieve the suffering. But at the end, you have the kindness and the clarity to discern what it is that you can do and what it is that you can't do. So you recognize the suffering in others, right? But but you're also aware of what it is that you're capable of, and so there is a sense of warmth and clarity. So so in I talk about having a soothing experience. This is another aspect of soothing experience: kindness and clarity and love. So just imagine that when we are going into this experience of compassion, we are doing this to have a soothing experience for ourselves, but we are also doing this with clarity and love. Okay, so the phrase is, may I hold my pain with kindness and care. May I hold my pain with kindness and care. And the idea is that we are comforting somebody else, but it doesn't mean that we have stopped suffering. We are all suffering. It's just that we are in a place where we can comfort somebody else, when we can be compassionate towards others, but we are also talking about holding our own pain with kindness and care, right? So I talked about those three causes and conditions for us to prepare when we come in to cultivate compassion for others, right? Now, the fourth cause and condition is the presence of community or Sangha. When we are suffering, we tend to isolate ourselves. We feel that, oh, we are the only ones that are suffering. The sense of isolation can do more harm than the original experience of suffering, right? When you isolate yourself, correct? So, what we are trying to do is we are, when Christian Neff talks about shared humanity, right? So, this is an example of shared humanity that we are not alone. There is support for us. We are supporting others, but we want others to also know that there are people around them that will support them, right? So we don't want anyone to feel alone, right? So at this point in time, so we took the first three phrases to arm ourselves when we go into compassion, right? We are protecting ourselves, we are arming ourselves, resourcing ourselves, and now we are talking about having compassionate to other people. So this is where you take an example of somebody in your life that is suffering. You know, somebody going through life transition, somebody that is going through some illness, whatever it could be, right? So now to make it real, you now think of somebody who's actually going through suffering. And now you think about the presence of community or Sangha, that um, that this is a warm feeling, but tinged with sorrow and concern, but you are not alone. Okay. So the phrase that you use is, may you feel the presence of caring hearts around you. So you wish for that person to feel support from others, that that person who's suffering is not isolated, right? So that's the fourth code. And like I said earlier, this is entirely customizable, right? So I'm giving you my version of this entire compassion exercise that that kind of reflects the expression of dependent origination, but you are free to modify it the way you see fit. Okay. So the first three phrases were to resource ourselves. Next three phases will be for other people to whom we are extending compassion to. Okay. And now the another condition, sorry, cause and condition for compassion is one of courage. So Karuna is a very active and courageous force. Okay, it's not inert, it's not a weak force, it's a very active and courageous force. It carries a strength and a willingness to stay present with suffering instead of turning away. Now, this whole the mindset to stay with suffering is a very powerful one. You know, it's not easy to stay with suffering, but compassion is a very courageous and active force, and you are reminding yourself that it is, right? So it this feels like emotional resilience and the ability to witness pain without shutting down. So the phrase for this is, may you be courageous in the face of suffering. So you are wishing for that person to be courageous when they are suffering. And then the another factor is strength, love, and clarity. So when we are when we are in touch with somebody that is undergoing suffering, the suffering might be tinged with sadness and sorrow, but we want that to be balanced with strength, love, and clarity. So, like I said, with compassion, you are not down regulating yourself to that person's suffering, but we want that person to up regulate to us. Correct? So, this is where strength, love, and clarity comes in. So, here the phrase is, may you feel your suffering without being overwhelmed by it. So, it's unfortunate that you're feeling suffering, but have enough strength and clarity so that you're not overwhelmed by it. You see? And the last one is shared humanity. This is something that Kristen Neff, talks about, shared humanity. So we experience Karuna as a strong feeling of shared humanity. We see the universality of suffering and feel a natural kinship with others. So, so here we experience Karuna as a quiet and intimate connection. So now this phrase is, may, so we are practicing compassion for somebody else, and we are saying that may our hearts remain open to the suffering that we both share. So Buddha's first noble truth, there is suffering, right? We are all suffering. When I'm extending compassion to you, I am reminding myself of our shared humanity. That this is something that we both share. This is a shared human experience of suffering. You see? So, so what did we do? Instead of jumping straight into compassion, like most people do, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. But what we have done is, using the principle of dependent origination, we have created these, we have looked at some of these causes and conditions that allow compassion to thrive. So the first three phrases, they allow compassion to thrive. And then we use compassion for the people, for someone that we know is suffering, and then we round it up with this experience of shared humanity, right? That this is, may our hearts remain open to the suffering that we both share. So when we do this compassion practice, we are resourcing ourselves, we are arming ourselves, then we are offering compassion, and then we are coming back to this experience of shared humanity. So the whole experience becomes a whole lot more powerful, because what we have done is we have increased our capacity for compassion. We have increased our capacity. We have opened up our hearts to be with someone who is suffering. All right, I want to take a break. Any questions? Are there any questions about anything I've said so far?
I'd like to share something,
Yeah, please, please.
but I don't know how to do it because I can't make this.
Oh, you want to come here and sit here? Okay,
Okay.
sure.
Handle. I go by the pronouns she, hers. This is so fitting to what happened to me right before I came in today. Um, because there was a man out in the street and he was stopping traffic and screaming and yelling and saying the F word, and traffic was stopping or going around him. I was coming up and he was on the other side of the street. So I parked to come in here and I waited for a while to see if anything was going to change in his demeanor. And he was really, really angry and upset. Or anyway, he was having an episode. And so I called 911 and I called the police to come. And then I got out of the car. And by then he was walking across toward me and toward the building. And so I asked him if I could talk to him. And he said, yes, I could. And his whole demeanor started changing, but I saw scattered all over the ground was all of his medical cards, his SNAP benefits, his everything from out of his wallet. And he started telling me about how he'd been so unhappy since his mother died 8 years ago. And I told him my name, and I said I was Candle, and he said, Candle Summers. And I said, yes. And he said, I've been following you on Facebook since the pandemic, since my mother died. And I mean, that was really totally amazing. But as I connected with him, I really felt his pain, and I had a lot of compassion for who he was and the suffering that he was going through. And just by being present with him and collecting his things and putting them in his little wallet thing and making sure it was secure in his pocket. And then after a while, I asked him if he had a place to go that he could feel safe, and could he get there. And he said yes, he had a bus pass and he could walk up to Burnside and take the bus all the way home to Milwaukee. But just in that, and then about that time, the policeman showed up and he was very kind. He just said he wanted to make sure um, that the man had that we were here to support him. And um, just the feeling of compassion that I had toward him, and the way that he calmed down when someone was there to relate to him. Um, I wasn't thinking about anything like you were saying, like trying to up level someone's pain and that sort of thing. It was just the compassion, just the response that I had. I wasn't even thinking about compassion, but just looking at my own maybe fear at first when I was sitting in my car deciding how to handle it. And then wondering what the best approach was, and just connecting with him made his attitude able to calm down. And when he left, at first I said, well, take a deep breath. And he just stood there and took a deep breath. It was really, really sweet. Uh, and then he felt like he could walk to the bus stop and go on. And so just the idea of being there for someone else who is suffering a lot. Um, I could see directly what you're talking about, that the compassion was felt by him and created a, well, I was equanimous in my dealing with him, and he seemed calmer, although as soon as he said a little bit more about his mother, he burst into tears again. But, I told him that I was coming in here and that we would hold him in our care and our kindness and our compassion, and that if he felt really terrible or had another episode on the bus going home, to know that he had support from somebody who cared for him. And so it really gave me an opportunity to sort of see what it is that you're talking about. Yeah. And is this a good time to see if anybody else wants to share anything?
Yeah.
Or do you have a lot more going on your talk?
No, no. After that, we can take a break and we can do the guided meditation. So I just have like a few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
And I kind of thought about you more, because you deal with people all the time that are doing probably all kinds of things out of anger and various, and you have to have a level of calmness while you're dealing with them, while they might be not liking you for what you're doing with them.
Yeah, I've been thinking about my patient throughout this whole talk, and I guess it's seeing compassion from a different angle. I think because part of my job is to be compassionate, but I guess choosing to like point that towards myself first allows me to be a better nurse and come to compassion more fully instead of like just as like a job description.
Yes. Yeah, because if it's just a job description, you will burn out pretty quickly, But with self-compassion, you can use these experiences to expand your heart to soothe yourself at the same time, And I'm sure, Candy, from the experience that you shared, when that was over, you felt good about yourself, right? That's the beauty of compassion, right? Uh, yeah, there you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when I came in, you didn't kick me out. Come back, right? So thank you. So that's what I wanted to convey when I talk about cause and condition. This is one thing that sometimes people miss. When we talk about compassion, we pair it with suffering of other people, and there is so much suffering at the individual level, at the society level, at the global level. But just know that compassion can be or needs to be a soothing experience in order for us to have it open up our hearts. You see, if it starts to hurt us, if we get depressed, if we get cynical, then it means that we are not doing it right. Okay, so Margaret has her hand open. Margaret, yes, you have a question or you want to share something?
Well, yeah, I didn't know if you wanted us to share now or later. Because
I'm sorry.
Do you want her to share now?
Oh no, please share now, please.
Okay. All right, because yeah, I had two
You can
things.
hear it.
I had two things in mind. Another element of this that is a lot of times dismissed, but I think it's important in our culture, is receiving care from others. For instance, today I went on a hike that was I didn't realize until I was in it that it was over my head, and there I was with about 10 other people, and I noticed now I'd been practicing quite a bit, uh, meditating quite a bit over the past few months, which is lovely. But the people, there were three different groups of people over the duration of the hike who helped me, put an arm out to help me, and it was so lovely, and it was
Oh,
it was so beautiful that
yes.
it was just incredible, and it felt good to receive it.
Yes.
It
Oh, thank
felt good
you.
to receive it because
Yes.
many times there's a resistance with
Yes.
people.
Yes.
Oh no, I'm okay. I can do it myself or whatever, even though they may not be able to, you know.
Yes.
And so that is so important. And yeah, that ego resistance comes up, I think,
Yes.
for a lot of people,
Yes.
and it makes things kind of rocky. It can, you know.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's all I'll say right now. I had something else in mind, but I think that's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you. That's a beautiful share. And yes, yeah, the ability to stay open to receive, that's also a very important kind of element, right? So yeah, when I talk about cause and conditions, there can be many, many such cause and conditions. I just highlighted three of them, right? But the the thrust of my talk today to is for people to understand the principle of dependent origination, that all these causes and conditions that are constantly moving can give rise to something else, you see. So we are not focusing on compassion directly, but we are also looking at some other areas that will help compassion to flower, much like gardening, right? You're looking at different areas. And yes, the acceptance, the ability to receive compassion is also key, and there could be others also, right? So thank you for sharing, Margaret. I just want to share a little story. And this was in a book by Leo Buscaglia. So Leo Buscaglia was a philosopher, he's a relationship expert, and he's Italian. So he was talking about this competition in a school in Italy, where they said that whoever does a compassionate act will win. Okay, so it was like a competition for school children to go out and express compassion. And the next day, this competition was won by a small kid, won that competition. And you know what he did? He was in his park with his parents, and he saw an old man in a park bench crying. He was crying. Turns out he was crying because he missed his wife that he lost many, many years ago. So he just went there and sat on his lap, you know. And this man cried, and then he stopped crying. And then the kid got out and came back to his dad. And then his dad said, "What did you just do?" He said, "Well, I just let the old man cry. You know, I just let him cry." So beautiful, right? So beautiful. Experience of compassion. So, okay, all right. So I just have one quotation, okay, on compassion. It's a bit long. It's quoted by a bodhisattva. So there's a bodhisattva who talked about compassion. All right. He said, "A human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." And do you know who this bodhisattva was? Albert Einstein. How beautiful, how profound, the last sentence, right? Yeah. A human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And that is the vision of Buddha also when he talks about the four Brahma Viharas, right? Start with yourself, start with somebody, and then keep expanding. So we talk about categories of people to practice compassion, right? Start with yourself, start with benefactors, right? People that love you, support you, nurture you, extend it to people that you don't get along, and then expand it to everybody. When we talk about neutral beings, then to all living beings. And sometimes when you do so, you'll feel that in your heart. You'll have the tangible experience that, oh, you'll be just blown away by the sheer beauty of this universe. Here, and you realize it's such a beauty and joy to be alive and to be on this path and to share your gifts with others. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you. All right. So thank you. Let's take a short break. We'll come back. We'll do a guided meditation. Okay. And the guided meditation will be where I'll repeat those 7 phrases one by one, and then you can take time to reflect on it and work on it on your own. Sounds good? Okay. Oh. Playing musical chairs.
Yes, I like this. I just thought I'd take this moment to point out the bathrooms are out there and the drinking fountain is out there. And also just to mention that we offer these teachings freely. And we like to support bringing teachers here, and we like to support paying rent here. And if you feel like you are gaining some benefit from today's practice, there's a box over here on the table for cash. There's also some QR codes for Venmo and for PayPal. We follow the tradition of the Buddhist time, where the teachings are given freely, and the exchange of offering the Dharma and receiving whatever comes, and we share that with others. So and we have opportunities like today. Trina did a day-long retreat here all day right before this. So, and I think at least, I don't know if Jessica went, but Gavin online went to it. And so it brings great joy, actually, the whole process of dana, of generosity. The way the Buddha taught it had to do with feeling delight before, during, and after the giving. And when you think about that, anytime you give, even whether it's, paying for your groceries, it's the act of generosity of like the joy of giving, the joy that happens while doing the giving, and then the joy of the receiving of the other person's happiness. So just think when you're giving in any way, the act of generosity, whether you're giving of your time or of your resources, that it is, in terms of this kind of teaching, it's always gratefully received. So you could take this time to do something over there at the table while you get up to go to the bathroom. And 5 minutes or less? 10? Okay. All right. And I'm going to pause the recording so it's not just a big blank spot.
Okay. Thank you all for coming back. We'll do a short guided meditation on cultivating compassion. So this is that guided meditation. Compassion is the heart's natural response to suffering, both in ourselves and others. When you practice compassion, it can evoke a deep, tender sense of caring, combined with a wish for suffering to be eased. So take a moment to let your body settle in a comfortable position. Relax the whole body. Keep the head, neck, and back erect, but not rigid. Keep the hands comfortably placed on the lap or on the knees. Intentionally cultivate an attitude of patience, gentleness, and kindness towards yourself. Allow the eyes to gently close and tune in to the feeling of the breath flowing in and out of the body. Focus your attention on the sensation of the breath moving past the nostrils. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. With each out breath, relax and soften your body. I will now repeat some phrases for compassion. In the short period of silence that follows each phrase, repeat it to yourself and allow the experience to wash over you. May I notice the many moments of self compassion throughout the day. May I notice the many moments of self compassion throughout the day. May I have a soothing experience while offering compassion to others. May I have a soothing experience while offering compassion to others. May I hold my pain with kindness and care. May I hold my pain with kindness and care. Now bring to mind someone you know that is suffering, someone that is going through a hard time. Bring their image to your mind or get a sense of their presence. Repeat these phrases to offer compassion to them. May you feel the presence of caring hearts around you. May you feel the presence of caring hearts around you. May you be courageous in the face of suffering. May you be courageous in the face of suffering. May you feel your suffering without being overwhelmed by it. May you feel your suffering without being overwhelmed by it. May our hearts remain open to the suffering we both share. May our hearts remain open to the suffering we both share. We now come to an end of this meditation practice. When you are ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you for doing this practice with me.
Feedback. Something you want to share from
Yes.
the experience just now.
Is there anything you want to share? I'll just open this up to people that are online. Any feedback, any sharing of experience?
Was any part of it? Or what worked?
Yeah. Hi, Casey, you came off mute.
Yes, yeah, I came up with it. But this is just a question, not for the meditative aspect, but just I just want to review what you said previously, if that's all right.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You said that I'm trying to remember, that there were three aspects of when it comes to like both passion overall, including self. There was the self-awareness part,
Yes.
like being aware of suffering, and then there's acknowledging pain. Suffering is part of life. And what was the last aspect? Um,
Huh? I'm sorry.
Better through your
Yeah.
words.
So, okay, the first three were we just kind of resourcing ourselves to practice compassion, right? May I notice the many moments of self-compassion? May I have a soothing experience? May I hold my pain with kindness and care, right? And then the next three were for the person that we were extending compassion to. May you feel the presence of caring hearts around you. May you be courageous in the face of suffering. May you feel your suffering without being overwhelmed by it. And then the last phrase, last affirmation was for all of us, for both of us. So may our hearts remain open to the suffering that we both share. Did I answer your question? Was that correct?
it's, yeah, no. You also said another aspect of compassion. I'm trying to remember what exactly you said. Um, is it just acknowledging like the acknowledging the negative aspects of oneself? I'm not sure if Ms. Channel mentioned or if it was you who mentioned it. For in terms of passion, mentioning like acknowledging the negative aspects of ourselves, just to relate more to people that face similar um
Yeah.
aspects. I'm not sure
Right.
if
You know what?
you
I'm so sorry. I'm not understanding your question, and you were kind of coming in and out. Did you guys answer my? Did you guys understand the question? I'm so sorry. Somehow the audio is bad at your end or our end. Can I ask you a favor? Can you type your question down in the chat, and I'll read it and I'll answer.
Okay, sounds
Yeah,
good.
sorry about that. Sorry. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Any feedback?
Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Go on. Wait a second.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I tried to do it, type in for for the chat. It says chat disabled. So I'm not.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Hang on.
Just one minute. Okay. All right. Okay. We have also.
But right then, we
Yeah. Yeah.
this is my responsibility to figure out the channel.
Okay. Why don't you ask a question? Gavin, I'll come to you in a minute. Okay.
I guess was, I don't know what I benefited from, I guess, practice today was most about I guess it has been part of the practice, the working on self-compassion. And when you had brought up that these other emotions are like elements of self-compassion, you had talked about anger.
Yes.
And, but I had recognized some other things for me, and having that kind of framework that those are elements of self-compassion, because I have been trying like shame specifically for me, but like is kind of like a feedback. There's that, but to kind of have a different perspective on like what has bringing me shame as like, you know, an unskilled element of self-compassion was a new perspective, which was helpful. And then during the meditation, I thought about other elements of our lives that are, you know, we do hard, difficult things. Like, I don't know, about going to work. I don't like going to work, but I'm trying to, I guess I could frame it as an element of self-compassion because it's like providing for myself.
Yes.
Other things like that, exercise, going to the gym is taking care of yourself in a challenging way, I guess.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear his experience? Oh, no. Oh, Jessica said yes. Okay. All right. Oh, sorry. We don't. Okay. Yeah. But basically, yeah. He said that he has, when I talked about the underlying emotion or heart quality of self compassion, when we experience anger or guilt or shame, so he was responding to it, that he could relate to it. And also when we are doing some difficult work, like, sometimes we are stuck in our jobs, uh, we don't have the freedom to just leave and get another job, etc. So it can be stressful, but knowing that you're doing this job as as an element of self-compassion can actually help us go through. And we are taking care of our bodies simply because we love ourselves. We want our bodies to be nimble. We want our bodies to do what we want to do, right? So those are all elements of self-compassion. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Oh, Gavin, you had a question?
Uh, yeah, I kind of had a similar kind of thought, except that it kind of feeds more into a practice that I've kind of already been more incorporating, which is like a meta practice,
Yes.
where it just seems like there's like this feedback loop between the Brahma Viharas where that loving kindness kind of feeds into the compassion, and the compassion feeds back into the loving kindness and into the equanimity and into the sympathetic joy.
Yes.
So I guess that was just my observation, and to say thank you for this wonderful talk and this wonderful practice.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes. And I forgot to mention the fact that, yes, when we talk about the four Brahma Viharas, right? Typically we start with loving kindness, self-love, loving, and then when loving kindness encounters suffering, that translates into compassion, you know but I want to frame the development or the cultivation of these four Brahma Viharas from the perspective of dependent origination, that there are causes and conditions that allow metta or loving kindness to thrive. Similar set or maybe different set of causes and conditions may cause compassion to thrive. So we are trying to cultivate these heart qualities through a wide variety of methods. We are stretching ourselves, so that we are able to um, to get better at this. You see, so thank you for sharing. Okay, um, Cassie, I'm sorry. Can you type now? Can you type your question?
Yeah, I've already had my question answered.
Oh,
When the food talk.
okay. And you know what? We can hear you very well now. Um,
Okay.
you may have done something at your end, but thank you. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
Yeah. Thank you. It was just I was using headphones. They weren't working correctly. So
Okay, okay, all right. Well, thank you. I'm glad your question
thank you.
was answered. Yeah. Anybody else? I know. I'm sorry we are running over a little bit, but any other question? Any other feedback? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. So next month I'll do the same. I'll use the same dependent origination principle to talk about loving kindness, and then sometime in December it'll be sympathetic joy, and January it'll be equanimity. So I'll cover all the 4 heart qualities.
And then you and I will do a day long retreat.
And then we are planning to day-long retreat. Yes,
And
yes.
come-
Sometime next year, early next year. Yeah.
Weeks ago, while other people do other things. So
Yeah.
Everybody's welcome to come back. Quite figured out the topic, but I'm creating something with stories.
Kendall, we can't hear you.
Oh,
Oh,
you'll have to
shoot.
say it.
Yes.
You just tell them I'm teaching the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. So Candle is going to teach the next 2 weeks. And she's kind of preparing her
Something
talk,
creative.
something creative. And the Saturdays when she gives a talk, you are most welcome to eat food after noon, right?
Yes, you are most welcome to eat food afternoon. But we will not have the
Yeah,
time that
yeah,
the
we won't have social.
subjects have. Because I have to be somewhere right now.
Okay, yeah. So there won't be any social time here in this Multoma Friends Meeting House. Okay, all right. Thank you all. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day and rest of the long weekend. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you
All right,
so
thank you.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was
Kathy.
good.